Hi, I'm John Strange from Your Business Freedom. One of the questions I've been most asked in my 30 years of working with small business owners is, how on earth do I find the time to work on my business and not just in my business, given that I don't even get everything done that I should do just working in my business? Now, what I want to do today is just share with you how I dealt with this problem. It may not be the best way of dealing with it, but at least it will give you a starting point, and you can just kind of work from there on what's going to work best for you. But before I tell you about how I solved this issue, I just want to give you some background on the situation I found myself in at the time. So you've got some context and you can see just how well it relates to your situation. I first started working on this problem back in the early 80s when I was approached by some people who wanted to start a private school up in Gawler, which is north of Adelaide in South Australia. And they didn't have anybody on the board that had business management and financial experience. So they approached me and asked me if I was willing to do it. Well, cut a long story short, I eventually agreed to do it. But what it meant was I had to give away my job as a general manager of a medium-sized company. We had to sell our house and we had to move up to Gawler. Now, there was no new job for me in Gawler. The role in getting the school started, and I'd made a 5-year commitment to get the school up and running and working. They weren't going to be able to afford to pay me, so I had to set up my own business, and I set up a financial planning practice in actual fact. But the school needed me to work probably 3 and 4 days a week to get them up and running and operational, and so that only left me with maybe 2 or 3 days a week at which I could earn a living because I had a wife, 2 children, my father lived with us, I had a dog, and because we had to buy a new house in Gawler, I also had a large mortgage. So I was really under the pump, and so I was scratching around looking for some solutions. And at that time I read a book called The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber, where he was talking about working on your business rather than in your business. And this really resonated with me, and I started to work out how I could start working on my business to make it more efficient. I couldn't give it any large blocks of time, so I began by working for half an hour a day in a coffee shop. And I tried several different coffee shops, and I found what worked for me was a busy coffee shop. One where there was a lot of noise going on, a lot of energy, and I found that I fed off of that. Now, some people will be looking for quiet, and they might go and pick a quiet spot where they can work. But for me, it worked by going somewhere where it was really busy, and I sat down to begin with for half an hour every morning, and all I did to begin with was to work out what I should be doing that day. So I kind of worked out a to-do list, if you like, and as time went on I started to fine-tune my to-do list, and I'm going to cover that in another video on how I worked out what were the key things that I should be working on. But one of the things that I did learn as I was working on how I was going to set my day up was that I could, in actual fact, pass a lot of the tasks on to somebody else if I took the time to train them. So as part of my to-do list each day was to think about who I could allocate duties to and how I could organize the training. So over a period of time, it evolved from just working on a to-do list to working on how I could give some of my tasks to somebody else. And as I gave more of my tasks to somebody else, I had more time available in which I could be working on my business and upon the school. So my half an hour then became an hour, and then became an hour and a half. And during this time, I then started to work on things like strategies, things like what was the vision statement for both my business and also for the school. And so I gradually started to take a little more time each morning to work upon those issues that would make the business and the school more effective and give me more time, which was most important to me, because to begin with I was working 7 days a week. Even the dog didn't recognize me after a time, and so I desperately needed to become more organized about things. So it began with just that simple idea: spend a half an hour each day in a coffee shop, get my day organized. I've since read a quote by somebody, and I can't remember who it was, and the quote read, "Don't start your day until you've finished it." And I found that that was a really good piece of advice. So at no stage now do I ever begin working on a day until I have worked my way through that day and got it all completed about what it is that I want to achieve for that day. And exactly how I do that, I'm going to cover in another video. But for the time being, if you can just start thinking about where you could go for just a short time. You can't do it in the office. You can't do it in the workshop. You can't do it in the shop. Wherever your place of work is, you cannot do it there. You've got to go somewhere else. Now, if that means leaving a half an hour earlier, as it did for me, and going to a coffee shop, well, then that's what you need to do. If it means leaving a half an hour earlier to go to a park or something similar, then do that. But just take a small bite at this and use that time firstly to start getting yourself truly organized. And then once you've got yourself truly organized, then work your way through who can you delegate things to? What task can you delegate? What training do you need to give that person to do that work for you? And you're not going to achieve this in a week or even a month. This is going to be an exercise that's going to take you some months. But if you stick to it diligently and keep at it, what you'll find is after several months, you're going to find that your life is so much easier.